Well, hello everyone. You know, over the years, if there's something I've noticed is that one of the most common questions I'm asked by my viewers is that they want to know how to figure out whether they're an any dominant or an ni dominant, or a strong any user or strong ni user. But for the sake of this video, we'll focus on dominance because it makes everything so much more starker and easier to convey. But the if you like, whatever is learned from this applies to strong end users as well, even though they might not be end dominants. The question is really, the premise of the person who's asking the question is always, the person says, I know I'm a strong end user, I know I'm an end dominant, but I get confused, I look for complex and subtle explanations of what makes any different from NI, and at times I feel like I got it, and yeah, I'm an any user. And then I start hesitating, but I'm kind of introverted. What if I'm an NI user? Because it's true that both NI and NE are described in terms of a strong propensity toward intuition, which makes sense. Strong propensity toward the generation of images, the generation of perceptions, the generation of associations, and that's all true. And it's true that so far there's no way of saying precisely if you're an any dominant or an ni dominant. But something that I've also learned through thinking about these issues is that trying to go for a complicated or complex or subtle or technical explanation usually doesn't help people, because it makes them likely to try to simplify what's explained and get further confused, or it gives them the opportunity to interpret both the NE explanation and the NI explanation in the same way and to identify with both. So what we need is to basically give an explanation of the difference that is sufficiently clear, simple, and stark that there's no way of saying, oh yeah, I'm both, or I can identify with both, okay? And that's a more pragmatic approach that I know is more useful to people. I've applied it before, in videos where I try to tell people how to distinguish an INFJ from an INTJ, or an INFJ from an INTP, and an INFJ from an INFP. Try to look for the simple differences that are dichotomous, that is to say they're not mutually compatible, okay? And so I'm going to give you two. The first one is fundamental, and it should be enough for you to figure it out. And the second will be a bit of a complement to that, okay? So basically, listen carefully, because this is the main thing that you ought to focus on as you ask yourself this question. Do you like change? Do you thrive with change or in changing environments? Are you stimulated by change? Do you get bored if there's no change? Do you get depressed maybe, or a bit anxious if there's no change? Do you feel like you're energized by change, right? If the answer to this is rather yes, you're an any dominant. If the answer to this is rather no, you're an NI dominant, okay? Now again, that's assuming that you already identify that you're an N dominant. We'll be charitable and assume you're right about that. Now ask yourself that question. And you'll notice you cannot, at one and the same time, need and love change, or enjoy change, or need change, and be stimulated by change, and at the very same time dislike it. Find it draining, find it anxiety-inducing, and find it an obstacle to your ideation, to the thriving of your body and mind, as opposed to the other option. So these two are not compatible, okay? One of the reasons why this simple distinction is not proposed nearly often enough as clearly the easiest way to tell if you're an NI dominant or an any dominant is because mistakenly, wrongly, right, people think that dislike of change must mean SI. SI has been associated in people's minds with the dislike of change, with conservatism, with traditionalism, and with a search for order and non-fluidity, rigidity, okay? Well, I'm not going to make a video about SI here, but you ought to understand that this is not a very accurate way of capturing SI. In some of what I said, there are true things about SI, but there are also false things about SI. But I'm not going to focus on SI here. Always remember that SI is on a perceiving axis that ought always to be understood as a partnership, as a constant interactive partnership between two functions. The two functions of perception that anybody has. It's either an NESI axis, which is sometimes reverted into an SINE axis, right? Or the other possibility, of course, is an NISE axis, sometimes reverted into an SENI axis. There's a reason why SE is associated with SI. There's a reason why, NE and SI, and there's a reason why NI is associated with SE. Okay. What is it in this pairing? Of course, one of the two functions needs to like change, needs to be attracted to change at some level, to novelty, and to tolerate uncertainty. Because without that, we would not be able to function. We'd be like paralyzed into utter stillness, and we would basically fritter away, we'll waste away, we would die in body and mind. It's SC that's providing the change. It's SC that's provided the stimulation. It's SC that thrives in the environment, in the NISC axis. And in the case of the NESI axis, it is NE that thrives in that, because PE, extroverted perception, is all about thriving in change, stimulation, uncertainty. Okay? The PI axis, SI and NI, are much more immobile, they're much more contemplative, they both need fixity and a certain level of immobility, rigidity, and timelessness. And in fact, both functions, when someone is in sync with those functions, tend to produce fantasies about timelessness, about the atemporal, about essences, about immortality, and other themes like that. It's common to both SI and NI. You have to take away from this video as well that NI has at least as much in common with SI as it has in common with NE. It's not a case that we have NI and NE together as the closest functions, and then NI and SI as like very, very distant functions. As long as you believe that, you're not going to understand how functions work, okay? NI and SI are introvert perceiving functions. Contemplation of inner contents requires that there's not too much disturbance in the environment. It's common sense when you think about it, right? So uncertainty is not going to be its friend. A change, particularly rapid change, is going to be an enemy and a source of anxiety. And it can only be counterbalanced with a reasonably healthy function of extrovert perception, which of course, in the case of an ISTJ, just like in the case of an INFJ or an INTJ or whatever, is going to be difficult, because in this case you have PI very high up in the stack and PE quite low down the stack. Okay, so just to speak about the complement very quickly, again, to tell the difference between NI and NE. Are you someone, I've said this before, I'll just reiterate it as a compliment, like I said, do you generate a lot of ideas and you tend to lose sight of some of them because you generate a lot of them? Or do you tend to generate only a few ideas, maybe the same ideas you generated a long time ago through various symbols and so forth? And what you do rather is you turn them upside down endlessly to look at all their different aspects of those same two or three ideas. If you more on the many ideas side, you're on any dominant. If you're on a few ideas but looked at through the prism of the multitude of different angles side, you're an anti-dominant. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, guys. And don't forget, I've written 2 books on the INFJ personality, happens to be an anti-dominant. If you want to know more about how INFJs can lead lives that are productive, fruitful, full of value, meaning, and purpose, and allow INFJs to flourish in a world that is often considered hostile these days, you should get this book. This is my latest book on the INFJ, The Infinite Soul, INFJ's Life in the Modern World. Explores all these questions in detail. Check the reviews. You might just want to get the book. It's a goodie, and its prequel, pardon me, is very much worth getting if you haven't got it yet, which is The Ecstatic Soul. And you look at the INFJ personality, who essentially set out my exploration of the INFJ personality by looking at the most in-depth investigation analysis of the INFJ mind, what it's like to be an INFJ and think like an INFJ. If you want to understand the INFJ, this is the book to get. Link is below as well. And as usual, guys, don't forget that I absolutely not require, but I depend on your kind donations. I have a Patreon page there. Please consider donating to my channel. You get perks in return, access to a a special Discord server, and we have already a beautiful server with a beautiful community, and we're talking a lot. I can provide some informal typings as well. In addition to that, we have you get access to bonus videos every 2 weeks. I provide in-depth discussions of videos I cover in mainstream YouTube or in my books. The latest one was a nearly 40-minute video on FENTI and the INFJ. So if you like that idea, that's another big perk. There's other ones as well, but don't forget to keep going with this channel. I need your support. Okay, see you guys. Bye-bye.